A big welcome to our channel. We are Team Crushing the Meta, and we're here for you guys with another episode of Crazy Game Changing, Part 2.
Crushing the Meta!
So, in the last part, we talked about the ban list and our thoughts about the ban list, and in this video, we'll talk about Dust and the Z.Dragons and also the new GRs. So the ban list, we've talked about each and every clan and we gave our thoughts about them, and we came out to the conclusion, let's say, that these are the cards that should or could go on the ban list. Let's talk about Assassin first. In my opinion, Bladewing as it is a good deck, a strong deck, and it is not unhealthy. But maybe with Dust could abuse Assassin a lot. So maybe with the release of Dust, we will see that Assassin will go to 2. I don't really advise Bushido to do this yet, but this card could go to 2. Given should stay at 4. There is nothing wrong with this grade 2. The starter of deleters, if people nowadays are crying and bitching about deleters, the starter of deleters could go to 1, so Bushido will have less headache with weak people that don't know how to play against deleters. Raven should go to 1 because it's the same as Refros and it has an unhealthy loop, and Luard is very strong as it is and it doesn't need Raven. And then we have Florentine. The reason why Florentine is in here because in our opinion, Florentine is one of the cards that has a stride skill for a subclan, and normally this skill will only work if you stride into a battle sister with a stride with battle sister into original card name. But Florentine works when you stride into Stillwater or any other stride, and that's in my opinion the mistake about this card. So this card should be counter blast 1, could be a battle sister or not, doesn't matter. When your G unit with battle sister in its original card name stride, you may pay the cost, blah 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 blah. So that's my opinion about this card. But now we have the topic of this video, which is first we have the Z.Dragons to talk about, and after that the GRs. The reason why I wanted to talk about the Z.Dragons because we have made another video before this, which we talked about them, and I will put a link in the description section for you guys to watch that video. It's a very nice video. But Stark and Ultima were not revealed yet, and now we have all of them are revealed, so we can compare them a little bit to each other. So first we have Ultima. Ultima is in my opinion one of the best Z.Dragons, but it has weaknesses, like when you play against Gear Chronicle with Hatred Hound, they could reshuffle your whole deck, so that's really bad. But what's really good about Ultima, if you don't know his skill, I would advise you to search him and understand what he could do. But let's say you put a stand trigger and a critical trigger on the top of your deck and you call 2 units. What do you guys think will happen? I will not tell you, you have to think about that yourself. So you stack a stand trigger and a critical trigger on the top of your deck. Then we go to Drachma. If you don't have a grade 3 in your hand, you're fucked, because next turn you either can't ride. If you may sometimes G-assist, then you could, but it's really hard if you play against Drachma and you don't have a grade 3 in your hand. So keep that in mind. When you play against Dragon Empires, always keep a grade 3 in your hand. And then we have Stark. Stark is one of the cards that could be abused from different clans, like the leaders could abuse him, Dimension Police could abuse him a lot, and he's really really good, and he doesn't really need a lot of setup. Then we have Dust. Let's talk about Dust later. We have Megiddo. Oh damn, that's also a very good set R. It could just refill your field out of nothing. Even in Grand Blue you can abuse him, call units that could power up themselves like Negro Rook, and you could always call cards like they could call after the attack like Night Mist. So there are a lot of combos that you could do with it, and you could always get the counter charge back when you call King Serpent and card like those. So there are some crazy combos that you could do with him even in Grand Blue, so that's really nice. And then we have Zoa. Don't underestimate Zoa. If you don't have a perfect guard, the same with Drachma, you pretty much will lose the game, or you will need a very 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 strong hand of a lot of cards and pretty strong G Guardians to stop Zoa, but otherwise you're definitely dead. And then we come back and talk about Dust. In my opinion, Dust is the strongest Z-Dragon of them all. And the reason for that is that Dust was given to a nation which could do a multiple attack or a multi-attack. Like when you have Zoa in Gear Chronicle, they could abuse this card a lot. I mean Dust. When you have Dust in Gear Chronicle, they could abuse that a lot. But the same with Pale Moon. Think about Dark Irregulars. Think about Assassins with Dust. Think about Charlotte as a Vanguard with Dust when you can't guard him with the Great Zeros. So you only have Perfigors to work with. That's really insane. The multi-attack they could get. Normally they also play like 6 or 8 stands, so that's also overkill. Think about him in Spike Brothers. Oh, that's also overkill. It's not easy to get off, but it is really strong. So I'm very happy that they changed the skill of Dust, that he can't do the 6 damage anymore, so he's more fair, but his first skill is still really unfair. So yeah, I'm happy that they gave us this Z-Dragon for my clan, but on the other hand, I think that they exaggerated a little bit with this card. And even in the anime, this is the only Dust or Z-Dragon that didn't win, and I think that's ironic because he is the best Z-Dragon out of them all, in our opinion. Now we have the new GRs. Sometimes Bushiroad creates something and that we don't agree with it, but in my opinion, this is the worst design of card or mechanic or whatever you want to call it that Bushiroad did in the whole 5 or 6 years that they now creating card. I've been playing this game from the start, so I know everything that there is to know about Cardfight Vanguard, but I really don't like this or these new GRs, and the reason is that you could use them as a first stride, second, third, fourth, sixth, whatever stride that you want to, and they become stronger every time you stride, and they don't flip themselves, they do nothing. So this is a card that you could have 3 or 4 times in your G zone and stride it multiple times, and I really don't like that. If you look at Stillwater, Stillwater has 2 skills. The first skill, sometimes you have to activate it to be able to use the second skill, and that's when you will have to unflip her to get the first skill. The same is with Ziegenberg. Ziegenberg, sometimes you don't have any counterblasts left or nothing that retires, so you have to use the first skill of Ziegenberg to be able to retire everything that your opponent has on the field, so you could finish them off or you don't have to discard. And then you would have to flip a Ziegenberg, so you have to give up a Ziegenberg. But these GRs doesn't flip anything because they are GRs. So this is actually a card that should be only once or twice in your G zone. So Bushiroad could do 2 things. They could put all of these GRs at 2. I will not put it at 1. They could put them at 2. So you can stride only twice to Overwhelm and to the Purge and to Alexander's and all of these. But they could also make them a persona flip. Like, let's talk about the Purge. If you compare the Purge to Stillwater or to Ziegenberg, then you don't always have to use his first skill. Sometimes you just use the second skill. If your opponent has like 5 damage, then you can't use the first skill, so why would you? So you only use the second skill, which costs you nothing. So in my opinion, they could make the Purge. If you want to use his first skill, you have to flip himself, and then you can use the first skill, and then you can compare him to Stillwater and to Ziegenberg. The same with Overwhelm. Overwhelm first skill is just too good to be a first stride. Like, you can draw so much out of her, or you could get a critical and a drive check as a first stride. That's too much. Your first stride should be something like a tier that could set up your field or your soul. The same with Dark Irregulars. The same with almost every clan. There are few clans that could finish off on the first stride because they are very aggressive. Like Battle Sisters, very aggressive. Spike Brothers, as in the whole clan, is very aggressive. And even when you play Dudleys, you cannot win on the first stride. You'd have to make some crazy combos to be able to win on the first stride, but usually you can't. But now with Alexandros and with Overwhelm, you can just kill your opponent off on your first stride. And I don't even want to start talking about the new Nectar one, because that's just a die max skill right there, but even better. So in my opinion, these cards should go to 2, or they should have some kind of a persona flip. The next thing that we want to talk about is the new Messiah stride. This is something that I don't agree with. Also, something else that I don't agree with is the two skills that this card has. The second skill, which is a counterblast of 1, choose a face down card from each zone, turn it face up. When this unit attacks, you may pay the cost. If you do, unlock all of your regards. If the number of cards that were unlocked 3 or more, soul charge 1, draw a card, and this card get an extra 10k. That skill by itself is alright. It's the same skill as a lot of Messiah strides that have when they attack that you unlock and they get a crit and power, or this card gets soul charge and draw 1 and power. That's alright. The first skill is not alright. The first skill is the skill that when this unit is placed, you may all fighters return their hand to their deck and they reshuffle it and they draw 5 new cards. That skill is not alright. Why? Because it doesn't fit in Link Joker, it does not fit in Messiah. If this skill was given to something like Nobutama, I would be alright with it. But the problem is, the first skill combined with the second skill is too much. Why? Because using this card would mean that you could attack multiple times with your regards. So let's say that you don't have the best regards, but they could still lock themselves. So you attack with your regards, you lock them, you attack with this card, you unlock them, and you will attack your opponent 5 times. But you also have another combo that you could attack 3 times with every regard when it's being unlocked. So that's 6 attacks plus himself, so that's 7 attack. And you could also boost that to 9 attacks if you want to. So in my opinion, that's too much. This card should have not been created the way it is. I know that this could only be a third stride because we don't have a Messiah G-Guardian yet. And I really say yet. But this card should have never been created. And another reason is why this card should have never been created is that this is the opposite of a Zero's Dragon. And I will tell you why. The Zero's Dragon have risks. When you stride into a Zero's Dragon, which should be a finisher, you have the risk that if you don't win, you definitely destroy your whole deck. Maybe if you play a Legion, you could do something on your next turn, but normally you destroy your whole deck. You can't G-Guard, you can't stride, and you can't use your GB skills. So you destroy your whole G-Zone, and you destroy your deck if you play a lot of GB1 skills. But if you stride into this card, you only have benefits from it. You draw 5 cards, and you still have your stride skill, you still have your end of turn skill, you still unlock, so you can do your whole Messiah things, because this card still unlocks when it attacks, and you still get benefit from it, and you destroy your opponent's hand. So that's why I say it's the opposite of a Zero's Dragon. There's one more thing about this card that I don't like. If you compare him to the GR of Nobutama, the GR from Nobutama that lets you keep only 4 cards in hand. If you compare him to that, let's say that your opponent has 12 cards in hand, or 10, or even 6. Let's say they have 6 cards in hand. You stride into the Nobutama stride and they could only keep 4. And then you have your other skills that let them discard. So let's say they have only 3 or only 2 or even 1. But they chose which cards they keep in hand. So at least they have like a G-Guardian or a Perfect Guard or anything that they could defend with. But also, Nobutama could only make 3 attacks. Nobutama doesn't have any unit in their whole clan that could do multiple attack. You could use a stride skill to let them discard, or you could use a stride skill to dominate one of their triggers and attack them, so you have 1 more attack, and you could get stand triggers. But you don't really have something that attack multiple times, except having stride skill or getting a stand trigger. On Messiah, you do have cards that do multiple attack because they lock and unlock themselves, and also this card gives you the advantage to unlock, so you get even more attacks. So that's a comparison. Also, at the end of your turn, if you play against Nobutama, you will get the other 2 cards because you had 6. The other 2 cards back to your hand. So let's say that's a grade 3 and something like a good grade 2 that could give you advantage on your next turn. And that's why that is really good. But when you play against this card, you don't get the cards that they were put back to your deck, back to your hand. So you lose the cards. You get 5 cards, they attack you multiple times, and when you have to defend most situations because this is a third stride. So this card just destroys the whole setup of your whole game. Like, it destroys your whole hand, and you shuffle that back to your deck and you redraw cards, and you will redraw cards. You have to be very lucky to be able to redraw the right cards, but in the most situations, this card is just overwhelming, actually. I don't find it OP because it's the third stride, so I find nothing OP. I mean, I don't really have a problem with this card, but I do think that it was designed wrong and it gives you a lot of advantage. I mean, if this was in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, people, if you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm not, you don't feel offended because of this, but Yu-Gi-Oh has a lot of cards. Like, let's take Dark Hole, for example, or if you have no knowledge of Yu-Gi-Oh, then don't think about that. But Yu-Gi-Oh has some cards in the game that when you go into that card, it changed the whole game. Like, the game just started, just restart the whole game. And this is what this card does. It restarts the whole game, and you draw more new cards, and it doesn't really fit in the clan or in the sub clan. So I don't think that this card was created right, especially because it has the second skill. If it was only the first skill, that would be alright. If it was only the second skill, that would also be alright. But the two skills with each other, that's just too much. So that's actually my thoughts in this video. It was a short video because it was actually made to be one video, the first and the second. But yeah, go and watch the first video because that's when we talk about the clans in general. So not only the ban list, but also the other cards and the other loops that are in there in the game, and everything that is healthy and unhealthy, and why we don't want to hit the Wiseman loop, but we do want to hit cards like Crafrost and Raven, those kind of things. Go and watch the video and you will get a lot of good things out of it. And if you don't agree with us, put that in the comment section, because we could also learn from you guys if you have a good point. We will never say, oh, you know, that's just bad. No, we know better. That's not the kind of team that we are. So if you don't agree with anything, you could give the video a dislike, or you could also give it a dislike and comment, or just comment on the video and tell us what you don't like about the video, or if you don't agree with us. But watch the video first. Don't talk before watching the video, because otherwise you will misunderstand us and we will think that you already watched the video. So there will be a misunderstanding right there. There is one thing that I also want to tell you guys before I tell you to go to our channel, subscribe to our channel, like our videos, blah 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 blah. Go to our group and Facebook group and go and like and do all of those stuff. But there is one more thing that I want to tell you, is that if you have any problem with a clan that you can't win against, or if you have a player in your regionals that is really good and you every time lose against him because he plays Deleters or Battle Sister or Great 17Cs or anything, or let's say that he plays Spike Brothers or Nobitama, or it doesn't really matter what he plays. But if you really have a problem with defeating a deck, then go and search for solutions. Don't say that the deck is too overpowered. Don't be lazy and say, Bushrod, you should ban this and you should do that and you should do this. No, go and try to understand how the deck works. Try to play the deck yourself, because then you will find weaknesses. Every deck has weaknesses, and when you do that, you will have more more than one way to win against that guy or that deck. So think about that. Don't just be weak and be stupid and be lazy and say, well, no, that deck is just too strong. Don't do that, guys. Just go and try to win your matches by being smart about it and by just learning your cards right and learning how your opponent deck works. And that's the difference between a good player and a bad player. Is a bad player could take any deck and he could learn the loops and he could go and win a tournament. But when he faced a deck that is just he doesn't know, or he never played against, or is just too good to play against his deck, then he will say, oh yeah, I lost because of my own deck, or I lost because I was unlucky, or I lost because of this, because of that. Sometimes you have to GSS multiple times, and sometimes you really have a bad luck and your opponent gets the right cards at the right time, then they could win. Then you say, I was unlucky, and that's alright. But in the most situations, people would say, well, yeah, it's because of my deck, and it's because that clan that he plays or deck that he plays is just too good. So yeah, think about that, guys. We don't want to see that. And yeah, thanks for watching, and go to our channel, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. But yeah, thanks for watching. Until next time.
Crushing the meta.